Hello. So I originally said I was going to make a full LE guide before Shadowlands, but we're basically the day before Shadowlands at this point as of recording this, and I'm just not confident enough in like the nitty-gritty talent choices and rotation stuff to really make a guide on it. So instead, I'm just going to tell you everything that is very time sensitive, such as soulbinds and covenant choices, and kind of tell you what I'm doing and the upsides and downsides, and also like legendary crafting and things like that. So let's get right into that. First thing first is the covenant choices. I'm going to assume that you already have a decent idea of what the covenants actually do. I'm going to tell you kind of the upsides and downsides of each one. So, currently, the most well-rounded covenant is going to be Kyrian. It does both good single target and AoE. So if you're a Mythic Plus player or just looking to be kind of a jack of all trades, Kyrian can be really good. It also provides really good healing. If you put it down, do the damage, put it back, then put it up on your party, and use Healing Stream Totem or Healing Surge or whatever else, it could like top your whole group in Mythic Plus, for example. So if you want to be well-rounded, Kyrian's a really good choice. Venthyr, kind of just not that great. Not good at all in single target compared to the other options. And in AoE, it's not particularly better than anything else. So I would, unless you particularly want the teleport or you just, like the aesthetic of it, I would choose something else. Now keep in mind, every single one of these choices is a really, really small difference. They tuned everything down a lot, so like at worst, if you pick the absolute worst covenant compared to the best covenant, you could be losing, maybe like 4 or 5% damage, probably closer to 1 to 3%. So if you're not going for super hardcore stuff and you really like a certain covenant for like the transmog or just the aesthetic of it or like the feel of it, then I would recommend just picking that one. But as a very hardcore player myself, I'm going to be giving you the ins and outs of the performance of each covenant, even though the differences are pretty small. But yeah, for performance-wise, I think Venthyr is pretty much a no-go right now in general. It's the interaction with Echoing Shock got changed, so it no longer interacts with Echoing Shock. That was kind of the redeeming factor here, so maybe they'll buff it to compensate. But as of right now, I see no reason to really pick Venthyr for performance. Night Fae, kind of similar, does decent single target, definitely keeps up on single target, but because the damage is split evenly amongst each enemy, the AoE really falls off. It also does good healing though. Not amazing healing, but it does okay healing. Not quite as good as Kyrian, but healing is healing nonetheless. And the Vulpin transfer is actually pretty nice. Similar to Venthyr, where you get like a nice movement speed ability, which is always useful, like no matter what you're doing. Whereas the Kyrian one is a bleed and heal, which is still pretty good, but not as necessary for LE Shaman as like a movement ability would be. And lastly, we got Necrolord, which in my opinion is the most interesting one by far. And Necrolord also is currently the highest single target option, and it is really good for spread cleave. And for AoE, it's not quite as good because you're not really, for like mass AoE, you aren't really typically multi-dotting or anything. So again, if you're a Mythic Plus player, you may want to stray away from this one, but for raid, this one's looking like the best option. So personally, my suggestion would be to pick between Necrolord and Kyrian, depending on what kind of content you're looking to be doing in the beginning of the expansion. Personally, I am going to be very, very focused on raid at the beginning of the expansion, and then going into Mythic Plus after that. So I will be picking Necrolord, and I suspect to keep Necrolord for the entirety of the raid. If something changes, you can swap for free. Like, you don't lose anything from swapping, as long as you don't swap to something more than once. So if you pick a Necrolord and you want to go to Kyrian for like, the Stone General's boss or whatever, you can go Kyrian. However, if on Sire's Denathrius you want to go back to Necrolord, you can't really do that without losing all of your renown, which is a pretty big setback. So these are the kind of things you want to be thinking about ahead of time. So there was some consideration for me to go Kyrian in the beginning, and then switch to Necrolord after Stone Generals, but I do think I'm just going to go Necrolord from the start and just kind of keep it. And then after progression, I'll consider going back to Kyrian or something for Mythic Plus and high keys and whatnot. Or if something else gets buffed, I'll consider those as well. Now let's talk about Soulbinds. So I'm going to be talking about specifically Kyrian and Necrolord Soulbinds because those are the ones I've looked into a lot. And I haven't really looked into the other ones. And I'm assuming if you're picking the other ones, you aren't really that focused on performance anyway, so you probably are not quite as interested in this information. So of the LE specific Soulbinds, only one is actually very good. That one is Call of Flame. Let me go find it. So for Necrolord, first, we'll start here. Ameni is currently the most powerful option, mostly because of lead by example. It helps that this is right at the beginning, so you have it right away. But every time you use your class ability, which is only a 45-second cooldown, you get a 5% int buff, and 4 allies near you get 2% int buff for 10 seconds. Then the Call of Flame increases your Fire Ally or Storm Ally by 35%, and this scales with their rank up to 50%. That is by far the best ally specific one. And then you can go down the tree here, kind of pick whatever, doesn't really matter. Get down here, you want to pick the potency conduit, which is the little X one. And the next best option, in my opinion, so there's things that are pretty close. So Pyroclastic Shock is not too bad, but in my opinion, Tumbling Waves is just going to be better, because even though it's kind of RNG, it's good in a very similar situation as Pyroclastic Shock, but it could allow you to do very big multi-dotting plays and stuff. So I think on AoE or Spread Cleave, this is going to be a lot better than the other options. And on single target, it's very, very similar, if not even a little bit better still. Everything else is honestly really terrible. Like Shake the Foundations is very bad. If it procs when you have Stormkeeper up, it just like uses the charge and you might just overcap like crazy. Only 10% chance and just like one base lightning bolt is not very good. High Voltage is kind of a similar to Mastery, where lightning bolt generating more Maelstrom makes you cast more Earth Shocks, which makes you cast less lightning bolts. So it kind of feeds into itself, making itself worse, which is kind of interesting, but it's also just not that great in general. Earth Shock isn't a massive part of our damage profile right now, so getting more of them isn't even that great. So basically what I'm saying is pick Call of Flame and Tumbling Waves in that order. Call of Flame first, Tumbling Wave second, and then whatever you get down there. For Kyrian, the best option is Pelagos. That is mostly because of Let Go of the Past. Even though it's been nerfed, it is still currently a very, very good trait for LA Shaman. This first one's pretty underwhelming because it gives Mastery, but then, Call of Flame again, definitely going to be up there, your number one pick again. Go down the tree, pick whatever you really want. This stuff doesn't really matter. And then here, I would recommend picking the specific one for Kyrian, which makes Vesper Totem do more damage to the nearest target. This is what allows Kyrian to be good on single target as well, because it scales, or rather, Vesper Totem does more damage on the first closest target to it, which on single target is always going to be the closest target, so it makes the Covenant do upwards of twice as much damage on single target. At the beginning of the expansion, it's going to be less than that, obviously, it's going to be 40%. So I'd recommend picking this one as your second pick, and then continue down the tree or whatever, and then down here is the Let Go of the Past that we talked about earlier, which is actually a really good trait, better than Call of Flame and Legendaries. That is what makes Pelagos particularly good. However, it is very late in the tree, so you may not have it for like the first week of progression, depending on how much renown you get and when you start progressing Mythic and whatnot. That is where Ameni is really nice, because his really, really powerful trait is the very first one. So to summarize, I would recommend picking Kyrian if you want to be more well-rounded. Also, Kyrian is good for Enhance as well, so if you want to play Enhance, then Kyrian would be a good option to play both. And Kyrian if you want to be doing Mythic Plus specifically. If you want to be very focused on Raid, like right from the beginning, and be as powerful as possible right away, I would pick Necrolord. And now let's talk about Legendaries. So, the best single target Legendary by a decent margin is Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence. This synergizes really well with Necrolord, because if you line it up right, you can get 20% more damage on the whole Necrolord like spread thing. I do believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe last time I checked that did give 20% more damage to the additional Lava Burst. However, once again, this Legendary is only really that great on single target. So if you're looking to be a Mythic Plus player, your other options could be Echoes of the Great Sundering, or Skybreaker's Fiery Demise. Skybreaker's Fiery Demise being a good middle ground of good in single target, good in AoE, and good in Spread Cleave. Whereas Echoes of the Great Sundering is going to be harder to utilize in single target because sometimes things move and you just lose the whole Earthquake. It's not that amazing in single target even if you get the whole Earthquake damage. However, in Mythic Plus, it is quite good. So it's kind of another personal choice of what kind of content you want to be doing. If you're very focused on Raid, I would pick Lava Resurgence, Windspeakers. If you are very focused on Mythic Plus, I would definitely consider picking Echoes. If you kind of want to do both and be decent in both, I would definitely recommend considering Skybreakers. However, Skybreakers may even be better for people doing Mythic Plus specifically. I'm not sure yet. Not being able to test these things very much has made it kind of hard to really give solid recommendations here, but I have seen a lot of people doing Skybreakers multi-dotting with Storm Ally kind of thing in beta, and it seemed to be doing pretty good. So That could also just be better for Mythic Plus as well than Echoes. But again, for me personally, I will be crafting Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence at the beginning because I'm going to be very focused on raid. I think that about sums up everything I wanted to talk about. If I have enough time, I will be doing an updated guide with more information like talent choices and rotational stuff and things like that. In the meantime, there is a really good guide on Storm with Lava. I can go find it real quick in the raid section, Castle Nathria, done by quite a few different people. Came together, a lot of really high-end players, to give some advice on like boss-to-boss stuff. So if you want that, definitely check out the guide here. I will link this in the description below if you want to check it out. It's all pretty well laid out in a written guide, easy to digest. But as I was saying, if I have enough time, I will be doing another video guide for the nitty-gritty talent choices and whatnot. That all depends on how easy it is to maintain my 4 characters in the beginning of the expansion. But hopefully this little video helped you guys come to some conclusions on your, engaging decisions Blizzard has laid in front of us. Fortunately, they've done a pretty good job of balancing stuff, so if you do really dislike something in particular, you're not like at all obligated to pick whatever is performing better, because you're really not losing that much by doing so. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Hopefully this helped, and hopefully I will have time to make the updated, more in-depth guide later. But yeah, thanks for watching. Like if you liked it, subscribe for more, whatever else, and I will catch you in the next video if I end up making it. Alright, peace.